I think Wrexham's 1-0 victory at Wycombe Wanderers last weekend was a really crucial moment in the automatic promotion race in League One. It felt quite open, and maybe not for the reasons that you'd maybe hoped for from a neutral point of view, the automatic promotion race, other than Birmingham City, of course, running away 12 points clear at the moment with the game in hand and looking very much on track to wrap things up in the next few weeks. But I think as far as Wycombe are concerned, a bit of uncertainty around how good is Mike Dodds still. I think some questions to be answered there. Wrexham, Phil Parkinson's the manager with the experience, if you like. He's won promotion from this level before with Bolton Wanderers in 16-17. And you could argue that experience and game nous showed in that 1-0 victory at Adams Park, which could decide two pretty evenly matched sides. But then you've got the outsiders who could put a run together. Stockport County, like Wrexham, they came up from League Two last season and could be on track under Dave Challoner for a strong promotion run. And then there's Charlton, who are much fancied by many to maybe take advantage if Wrexham and Wycombe are unable to seize their own advantage. Plenty to get stuck into, more questions than answers. So we're going to be doing our best to cover it as best we can on this League One podcast. Yes, welcome along to EFL Debate. Before we get started, get yourself subscribed to us on YouTube and on Spotify, because that would help us out an awful lot. First of all, for now, I'm delighted to be joined by my co-host for the evening, James McClare, Birmingham City fan, been following League One this season, maybe not for much longer. James, we spoke a little bit about the automatic promotion race for second in League One last time, and I think you fancied Wrexham, and I suppose that's been vindicated somewhat by that crucial win for them at Adams Park last week.
Yeah, I think obviously there was a bit of nervousness after I've made that prediction. Wrexham had a little bit of a wobble, so maybe I was regretting my choice a little bit then. But certainly with that win at Wycombe, it puts them right into the pole position, even though Wycombe got that win over Rotherham in midweek as well. But yeah, really big few weeks for them. I think they've got Stockport next as well. So yeah, if they can come through that one, then they're definitely in the driving seat.
Yeah, they certainly are. I'm really curious to see whether, because Wycombe at the moment are ahead on goal difference over Wrexham. They did get that dramatic victory at Rotherham in midweek. But the interesting thing about Wycombe, as well as the managerial situation, which we've talked about, is they brought in 15 new players in January. So it's a really unusual situation to be in. On paper, such an exciting position, a chance for Wycombe Wanderers to attain championship football for the second time in their entire history as originally a non-league club up until the Martin O'Neill days of the mid-90s. So this is a really exciting opportunity in many ways for Wycombe Wanderers, and yet it's also a period of transition, which is it's counterintuitive, isn't it?
Yeah, it was a bit of a strange one, wasn't it, in January, because you had the turn down bids for Richard Kone, and it felt as though that was a very clear signal of intent that they're taking their chance now. They know they're in a good position, and maybe they won't get into as good of a position in terms of points tallies for, you can never guarantee when your next chance is going to be. But then obviously Mike Dodds coming in was a bit more of a long-term appointment. And then, as you mentioned, the recruitment has very much been focused on younger players. And obviously there's been a bit of a shift in their recruitment model throughout the season with changes in personnel there. So it'll be interesting whether they do get over the line, Wycombe, because they've kind of gone for a bit of a mix of strategies between wanting promotion now, but then also trying to plan for the future as well. And like you say, when they went up last time in the Gareth Ainsworth, they were probably not a miracle promotion, but they were probably one of the most fancy teams in the division, and then ended up getting there. Whereas this time, it feels like they're going up, and they're going up to stay. That it's more of a planned process rather than before. It felt like they were punching above their weight a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Charlton, are we excited about Charlton and what they can do under Nathan Jones?
I think Nathan Jones' teams are always interesting, aren't they? Even if you just look at the way they play and the aggression, tenacity that they have in their style, it's always brilliant. And obviously the clips that we've seen from him over the last few weeks as well make for some good viewing. And when he gets a team going, the fans are believing. He's a really, really interesting coach, because you know that there's quality in there, and like I say, his teams play with a really attractive style. And the fact that Charlton are on such a good run, but not just in the short term. Obviously, they've been picked up the most points since before Christmas now out of any team in the division. So it's not like it's just a short burst of form, and you could say maybe they'll have a little bit of a drop off. That they've been doing this for a substantial period. So you have to be excited about them. They've got the momentum. And as we mentioned, Wycombe have had some frailties under Mike Dodds. Wrexham, obviously, their home form has started to slip a little bit. And I know that their away form has kind of countered that, because that's in a drastic upturn as well. But with the momentum that Charlton are bringing, it's hard to write them off really and say that they can't go and take advantage of the weaknesses that we're seeing from Wrexham and Wycombe at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. But Wrexham certainly produced a performance of solidity at Adams Park last weekend to get all 3 points with a lovely finish from Sam Smith. So I'm delighted to be joined now by Matt Jones from the Racecourse Ramble podcast. Matt, you must be in dreamland, I suppose, at the moment, with being in the automatic promotion race in League One conversation going into the last 9 games.
Good evening, both. I hope you're all right. Yeah, Gab, as I've sort of reiterated before, not taking anything for granted, very well aware that things can turn very quickly, but Saturday felt like a big moment, although it was a funny game, wasn't it? I think you were there, Gab, weren't you?
Yeah.
With the disruption and the unfortunate sort of break in play that we had towards the end. It was a nothing game before that, wasn't it? It was it was meandering nowhere. As I don't know whether both teams were scared or what. It was a nothing game, but we've come up with a moment, and this is the type of thing that we've done consistently. That's led me to sit here and tell you, and maybe you can see it a little bit now, why I'm not sort of overly, I know we're in a good position, but I'm not ranting and raving about how brilliant we are and how we deserve to be in second place. Hopefully you can see that a little bit now, having seen the game. One-off game I appreciate, but you've got to experience a pretty typical performance.
Yeah, I'm quite torn on it, Matt, because on the one hand, there's part of me leaning to it saying, if I don't trust anyone else to find consistency, you've got a manager in Phil Parkinson who knows how to consistently churn out results. He's done it before at this level with Bolton, with Colchester, I suppose, as well. And I think he got Swindon to the playoffs. But I think Bradford City, of course, in League Two as well. But I'm just thinking, as much as there's the experience there of Phil Parkinson, yes, I'm not necessarily super won over by Wrexham as a creative outlet or entity. But
I understand that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a fair criticism. Yeah. That is a fair criticism, and one that we've not addressed. And I like, regardless of where we finish, whether it's in the auto or the promotion spot. Sorry to interrupt, by the way. I'm just fearful of having to go into a playoff. Am I overly confident that we'll be able to overcome a team in good form, perhaps, top of the table? I'm not. We've got some great players, but we have to create moments, and we're not. We don't create a lot of them, as you saw on Saturday. And let's be fair to Wycombe. They could have snatched points from that game at the end, couldn't they? Arthur Okonkwo's come up with a massive save at the end. If you sort of think back to the end of that game, so I think that it's a fair question for you to ask, Gab.
Yeah, I think it's a game that could have gone either way, because I think if it had finished organically without the support being taken ill, which, by the way, wonderful news that he's in a stable condition and hopefully he gets well soon, of course. I think had the game finished organically, I think it might have, as you say, meandered out into a draw. And I also think, actually, immediately after the restart, Wrexham had a header that maybe Okonkwo needed to save, or did it go just over the bar?
That's straight from the corner, I think. Yeah.
So I do feel like it's a game that could have gone another way. But
great.
Yeah, but then you're still up there, and it's not you're not up there by accident at this stage of the season, of course.
I don't. Is it a skill being able to win games in the way that we are? Because that is pretty typical. That is a snapshot of the majority of our season, right? So, is that a skill that you can do that so often? I asked this question on our podcast last night. We had it as a talking point. Is it sustainable? But we've been doing it all season. So, as Stephen Fletcher came on and changed that game for us, really, he caused a bit of chaos in the box at the end. He's got 5 goals. He's got 5 match-winning goals as a substitute, which is it's unreal. I know I keep reading that stat out, but it doesn't feel like it's sustainable and that it's a good way to try and win games. But yet here we are. We have done it all season. So the question just is will our luck run out, or will somebody else just come with a style of play that we're not in that game? And there was a great piece by one of the local journalists. Wrexham have got the most wins this season in League One by just 1 goal difference. So it feels like, so you could start to understand why I'm on this. Sorry for waffling. I'm on this fence all the time. That I see us just edging games all the time and not really going and winning by 2 or 3 goals like a Birmingham does or some other teams do. So you always feel like you're in a game and you could always draw it or lose it. So this is why, hopefully this is painting a picture to you as to why I'm quite reserved with my end of season expectations, Gab. And James, sorry.
It's all right, mate.
James, we've obviously played Wrexham twice. From a Birmingham City perspective, I think we beat them 3-1 in September, maybe, and drew 1-1, a solid away point in January, I think it was. I'm quite glad to have 4 points off Wrexham because they've been a very tough side this season under Phil Parkinson, as you'd expect. James, what did you make of Wrexham in those games?
I think they struggled in the first game. Obviously, they come out the blocks flying, got that goal, and then after that, Blues settled into it, and we were terrible for the first 10 minutes. But after that, I think it was just a game where Blues took the initiative, and it wasn't really much to do with Wrexham. It was more just that Blues were fantastic on that night. And then in the second game, it was almost the absolute opposite of that, where, Wrexham did come out quickly again and got the goal, but then Blues kind of settled in for the first half, and we thought, okay, it might be a similar story where we're going to get a foothold in the game. But the second half, we were absolutely hanging on. Very lucky, I'd say, to come away with a point in the end. But I don't think that's especially a fair reflection in those 2 games of Wrexham across the season. Like Matt's mentioned, obviously it's been very tight in a lot of the games, but I do think there is a skill to that. Like you say, in a short burst of form and you say you're edging games, you probably think it's not sustainable and it will come to an end, but you're doing it over such a long period that there must be a skill to it somehow to keep doing it. And what's been an issue, obviously, we've talked about the creativity before with Wrexham. And I think that's been shown in terms of, I know not everyone's a fan of XG, but the forwards, Stephen Fletcher and Paul Mullin have got the most XG per 90 of any of Wrexham's forwards. And neither of those 2 combined have only got 11 starts. So the forwards that are getting the best chances are not often on the pitch enough, whether that's a creativity issue or personnel with the forwards. But then you've got Sam Smith now who's coming into a bit of form, and when Arthur Okonkwo is in such good form at the other end, like you mentioned that save, Matt, from the James Berry shot, that could literally be the difference between promotion and not promotion. When you've got 2 players at either end of the pitch that are in great form and you're a kind of team where the margins really do matter, then maybe that will just give them the edge and push them over the line.
Yeah, I'm still so torn by whether it's a skill or not. I just can't get my head around it. But you mentioned Mullin, and we've got a debate going on. What's going on with Mullin? He's like 6th choice now, we think. He's dropped down the pecking order. He barely gets a kick. Just seems to have fallen out of favour a little bit. Fans are crying for him to come back because Jay Rodriguez hasn't set the world alight yet. I'd be interested in your thoughts on him, Gab, on Saturday, whether you'd just give us a quick few words on him. But there's a debate at the moment because Smith is scoring and looks lively, and Rodriguez looks a little bit lost in the system, and whether we're not quite using him right.
Do you think he's dropping too deep, Matt?
Yeah, I saw him at right back at one point, and I was like, I don't understand why you're there. It's great that you want to work and you want to help, but I don't need you there. We need you up front because otherwise the ball just comes straight back at you, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's what I would say. I'm not sure I see him as the one off the main striker. I would rather have him backing into centre halves, especially if you're going to play, because that's the thing. You're playing this direct style. You want to have a crossing heavy style. You want to have two people, slap bang front and centre. So that would be my thinking on it.
Yeah, it's been straight. I bear in mind I hadn't seen him for years, so I didn't know exactly what he'd become at the latter part of his career. I didn't see him as that out and out number 10 behind a striker. I saw him, up with Smith leading the line. Is how I saw him, but I could be totally wrong because as I said, I haven't followed his career probably as good as you might have. And I think he does get isolated then, Smith, and then it's tough for us to keep the ball and build from wherever that play from that point.
What I would say though, Matt, was it was a wonderful finish, wasn't it, from Sam Smith? And I'm just wondering, it's 3 goals in 9 for him now. Do you see him as somebody who could finish the season in really hot goal scoring form?
It was a great volley, because obviously it kind of comes over his shoulder in the air for people who haven't seen it. It's one of those that you can quite easily squiff at the corner flag, can't you, if you're on another day? And it does get a little deflection, I believe. So don't want to take that away. But still, as long as we can create for him, this is my concern, he will score goals. He's got the record to show that, hasn't he? So he'll work hard. He's a pest. He's a menace. If you think back to that game at Wycombe, he made another chance for himself that he hit the post from chasing down a back pass. So as long as we create for him, my only concern is, because of obviously we've lost Andy Cannon to injury, Elliot Lee's just coming back, is can we just make enough chances for him? And that is the challenge that Wrexham are going to have for the next 9 games. Can we do that? And obviously, I really hope we can. But obviously, other teams will be trying to stop that, of course, as well, won't they?
I do wonder. Sorry to cut you off there, Gav. That maybe. Obviously, you talked about Rodriguez and the struggles that he's had, and obviously him coming into the team has coincided with McLean and Barnett perhaps dropping out on occasion as well, and maybe him going looking for it a bit more is probably a symptom of that, in terms of you're losing a little bit of the formula that's made you so successful. And that's where I think Smith could come in really useful. For me, I felt it was a bit of an evolutionary signing for Wrexham, that he has that physicality to his game but can do a bit more and create something out of nothing a little bit more, which is probably where Smith will give you the edge over the options you might have had in the first part of the season.
Yeah, Longman's done really well, to be fair. Him and Barnett, that's a proper battle that is on the right side for who starts. If anybody drops form or drops levels in training or whatever Phil Parkinson's barometer is, then the other one can play quite comfortably. The left side is interesting because we'd actually looked a lot more dynamic when Seb Revan come into the side, a bit of youth, a bit of legs. But then he just had, I can't remember, it was Reading, I think. He had a real off game at Reading, and Parky then pulled him immediately. So it's going to be really interesting on Saturday to see, is it McLean again, or does he bring Revan back in? What does he do? How will Phil Parkinson weigh up that challenge on Saturday of a good Stockport side that come to visit?
Yeah, well, let's have a look at the fixtures for Wrexham going into the run-in. Basically, we're at now. Stockport at home, as you mentioned, then Exeter City away, then Cambridge United away, then Burton Albion at home, then Wigan Athletic away, Bristol Rovers at home, Blackpool away, then Charlton at home on the penultimate weekend of the season. What a game that could prove to be.
I think that could be the one, Gab.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt again. That could be key.
Yeah. And then Lincoln away. So do you know what, though? I would say that's actually a pretty favourable run-in. Because the 2 big home games against Stockport and Charlton, they're obviously their home games. So the two big games you've got that you would say are the difficult fixtures, they're at home. Other than that, it's pretty much teams that are either down the bottom or are pretty safe in mid-table and don't have an awful lot left to play for.
Yeah.
Granted, that might be true to a lot of teams, given the way the season has panned out, but it's not the same as, I don't know, going to Huddersfield or going to Bolton or teams that are sort of in the playoff scramble still. I think that's a pretty favourable fixture list.
Yeah, I did that. I did a predictor type thing yesterday for a video where we sort of looked at it. So we've got 2 of the top 7 to play. Wycombe have got 4. Charlton have got 3. Stockport have got 3, I think it was. Huddersfield had 3 and Bolton had 1. I don't know whether you still class as Bolton as being in it or not, depending on who you support. So the fixtures are should we say favourable for the time of the year? I don't, they look winnable on paper, don't they?
Of course,
And I don't know whether you teams at the bottom of the table. I guess I think those places look sewn up now, don't they? And within a week or two, it's starting to get to they're cut away, aren't they? That win for Peterborough has taken them away. So those sides might be on the beach. Are they on the beach, or are they going to have a free hit to come and let's have a crazy game? It could go either way, couldn't it? But I'm glad we haven't got. I think Wycombe the common consensus among Wrexham fans is Wycombe have got the hardest run in. And the reason for that is because they've still got Huddersfield away, they've got Bolton away, they've got Stockport at home, and they've got Charlton at home. That's 4 of their last 9. That's tough, isn't it? So it's Charlton. We've turned our attention to Charlton now. I think we're starting to see that they're coming late, and they could be the ones that come and sort of snatch. Which is why I said to you that by the time we've played another 7 games, that Charlton against Wrexham game could be it could be our new version of the Notts County game we played in the National League a couple of years ago. If you
was that
remember.
The Foster save?
That was which I mean, we didn't bill it as this, but the TV coverage billed it as the biggest game ever in the National League and all that. So if you remember, we were the 2 top teams in the league. So
but Matt, Wrexham fans are responsible for everything the mainstream media says.
Of course we are. We shape the narrative, don't we? Yeah, we send them emails with what you should say and what to write and all that. Of course we do. Yeah.
Absolutely. Can you give me a sort of percentage based on Wrexham's top 2 chances? Where about 40%? Are we talking?
Oh God. Well, listen. In my predictor, and I sat down and I tried to work out. It's hard, isn't it? I try to work out exactly how many points everybody would finish with, and I had us finishing 2 points ahead of Charlton to make that second place. But obviously there's a little bit of it's hard to do because there's a little bit of natural bias there, isn't there? And invariably along the way there'll be everyone will have a shock, won't they? There'll be another twist and a turn from everybody. But these games are disappearing, Gab, and every time we sit here we go, well, yeah, but we might fall out yet. We might, here we still are, aren't we?
You've said it all season.
Correct.
Haven't
Yeah. But then there's that we were well beaten at Reading, and that was what I was concerned with. And I know you can drop points, but Reading beat us comprehensively, really. Not that they're a bad side or anything, but they are a sort of they're a top 3rd side rather than a promotion chasing side, aren't they?
Sure.
So I think because there's so little of the season left, I think we're just gonna pick Charlton, I hope. But I've got it down to that game. Basically, we're going to have to not lose to Charlton in order to go up. So I don't know what percentage you'd put on that, but I think it's starting to look like we're going to have a very good chance. That's the best I can do.
Well, just before I let you go, Matt, I'm going to bring in Chris, our Charlton fan. Thanks so much for stepping in, Chris, at late notice. Really appreciate it. How do you see Wrexham as a promotion rival?
Oh, God. Where do I start with this? I mean, the fact we're even in this conversation in the first place is incredible, given where we were in December. But I personally think it is us or Wrexham at the end of the day. Been watching a bit of Wycombe, watched a game against Rotherham Tuesday night. wasn't entirely impressed with them, to be completely honest. And I think with the change in management, losing Bloomfield, I think they will start to fall off end of the season. I do believe it's going to go down right to the wire. I believe the Wrexham Charlton game, I think the outcome of that game will determine who goes up in second.
Oh my God, I'm getting nervous already. And
You're not even, but you're a neutral. What are you nervous for? Just turn the telly on and enjoy the fireworks. Get the popcorn.
I know. Matt, thanks so much for joining us, and keep up the great work on the Racecourse Ramble.
Thank you. Thanks both. Have a good evening, everybody.
Cheers, and you.
So just to kind of go into a bit more detail on Charlton, Chris. I think I'm right in saying since mid-December you've accumulated as many points as our team, Birmingham City. So that's very impressive. Do you think that gets maybe overlooked a little bit in the conversation around automatic promotion, that people can maybe look so much at the league table right now and maybe disregard the form a little bit?
Yes, I think considering the fact it's practically been Wrexham, Wycombe all season, and the amount of points it is. So 5-point gap, I'd say, is still pretty decent to try and catch at this stage of the season. But I think if you actually look at the form and taking that into consideration, we're arguably behind Birmingham, the best team in the league at the moment. So I think we are getting underlooked at the moment. I think Stockport have been heavily underlooked as well, really. I think the whole Wycombe Wrexham thing's been going on for so many weeks now that we're sort of going under the radar, and I think that's helping both our chances, to be honest, us and Stockport.
Interesting. I mean, James, Charlton are the one of three teams to beat us this season, and I think this was back in September, sometime in autumn, and they devised a really strong, aggressive out of possession game plan that managed to target us and do what very few teams have done. So from a Birmingham City perspective, you've got to give them some kudos for that.
100%. I think they are. Oh, sorry, Chris.
Sorry, no, go on, please.
I think they are. It's probably the best performance we've seen against Blues this season. That was absolutely fantastic on the game where they beat us. And even when they come to St Andrews, I don't think that it was a million miles in the game. Like Miles Leaburn had a chance, a header, I think, and there's a few moments where Charlton, came forward and looked as though they could have caused issues. Second half, it wasn't like we were dominating the ball totally. I feel like Charlton was definitely in the game, and it probably the timing of those two results probably goes to what Chris was saying, that they're not being considered as much as they should be. That it's had they beaten Blues in the second game and that had been included in the run, then maybe people would be taking that a bit more seriously. But because Blues kind of halted all of that form with that win, it probably goes against them a little bit. But Charlton, I've talked about Nathan Jones in the intro and how much I rate his teams. And I feel like there's such variety in Charlton's attack. They've got pace, experience. They've got goals for midfield. The centre-backs from set pieces are always a danger. There's loads and loads of variety. And when you look at the options they've got in off the bench as well, you looked Daniel Kanua, I saw you mention him the other day, Gabbers, a sensible transfer to someone else. And you've even got like Gaston Ahadme has hardly been involved. Chuksaniki is always a chaotic player. We saw him at Blues before, obviously. There's definitely a lot of elements in that Charlton squad that can cause issues for teams. And maybe it'll be an unsung hero that steps forward in the last few weeks.
Yeah. Go for it, Chris.
So, yeah, absolutely. I think with the variety, with what we've really built on since January is having a key core group of players that offer us something completely different. And I think we've always been good out of possession team this season. Just in possession, we've always had work to do, and I think that's finally clicked into place. And I think we look like a really good team.
What tweaks do you think Nathan Jones made around sort of mid-December time that has taken you up, given you different avenues, I suppose, to threaten the opposition on top of that solid defensive base that you've had all season?
So I think personally change back into formation. So we started the season playing a 3-5-2, and we were sort of getting over the line. And then I think we played Bristol Rovers away just before Birmingham, and it was probably one of the worst performances I've ever seen from a Charlton side, to be honest.
Oh, wow.
So we knew coming into against Birmingham, we needed to do something. We changed formation completely, and as James was saying, we played absolutely brilliantly, and we thought that was the way forward. Unfortunately, it wasn't. And then a few weeks later, we were dropping further down. And then we switched back to a 3-5-2 and started to play more between the thirds. We were very heavily long ball dominant start of the year. Now we're starting to see a bit more playing through the thirds, using the technical quality we've actually got in that midfield, which was very underutilised by Nathan Jones at the start of the season. And I think that's just been the reason we've managed to progress as a club so far.
You've got a plethora of strikers as well, Chris, because I really liked what I saw of Daniel Carney last season. I also really like the Saturday night, and I like the way you move chant for him. And I think he's a really exciting talent. But I think it's only 5 starts he's had in the league this season, which surprised me a little bit because I do think a lot of him. But I guess that shows the quality of your other options.
Yeah, I mean, I'm one of the Charlton fans who absolutely loves him. I think he offers so much. I think he's probably one of the most all-round strikers we've got. But I mean, with the form Matty Godden's in, he's been absolutely incredible last few weeks. You know, Tyrese Campbell's been absolutely brilliant. His goal and assists he's a perfect demonstration. You watch football on grass rather than paper. He's been absolutely incredible. And then you've got other options like Lee Byrne, who's obviously 6'7" target man. He adds another dynamic to the game. And Nike's always been a super sub off the bench. We've got so many good, different quality options. I think Carney's really unlucky because I think he can do a solid job at this level. It's just a shame he's started to have that come into his own when we've got so many other good strikers at the club at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. What about Kane Ramsey, Chris? You're in the conversation for Player of the Year for you?
You know, if he was fit the whole season, he definitely would have won it. But I think Lloyd Jones has been the best centre back in League One this season, easily by miles, along with Clara. But Kane Ramsey, just remember, yeah, Kane Ramsey's absolutely incredible. I mean, after every game, he can put a 3-minute highlight compilation of just his moments throughout the game because he's so involved. He's got absolutely everything. He can play on a wing back, full back, centre half. He's strong, physical, so good on the ball. I think he's absolutely brilliant. There's no way he'll be, whether we get promoted or what, there's no way he'll be a Charlton player next year.
Wow. Yeah, very exciting player. James, I mean, I'm kind of getting taken as Chris is talking. I'm sort of being won over by Charlton even more. I mean, they've got players like Thierry Small, who I think is a really exciting talent, and Connor Coventry reminds me a bit of a young Michael Carrick in midfield as well. So they've got some really good players. I'm starting to think actually they could be the one that sort of really motors in at the business end.
Yeah, I think Chris talked about Kane Ramsey there, and he was absolutely fantastic in that first game at the Valley where they beat Blues. He was man of the match that day. Really good in the reverse fixture as well. I think he's been really crucial because, again, Chris talked about the difference in shape between the 4-2-3-1 and the 3-5-2, and the flexibility they've got with the fullbacks and Edwards and Ramsey really allows for that. And Thierry Small as well, because he can kind of do a bit of everything, Thierry Small, with the power that he's got, and can kind of be that engine up and down. So Ramsey can almost tuck into a back three when he wants, and Small can be the wing back. And then when they want to move to a 4, then Ramsey can push a bit wider and Small a bit further on. And yeah, the variety, as I talked about, is fantastic. I still feel as though there could be more goals from midfield. You've got Greg Doherty and Luke Berry and kind of Coventry, those kind of players that I really like. But yeah, the fact that we're talking about there could be more to get from this Charlton team just shows how good they are as a squad. I think they're the most balanced out of the teams, I would say, in the debate at the moment. They've definitely got like the most amount of options.
Yeah, I mean, do you want to talk a bit about that midfield then, Chris? Because you got some interesting options in there, as well as Karoy Anderson, by the way, who's another really exciting prospect.
Yeah, brilliant. With Connor Coventry, I think he's definitely gone under the radar this season because he's one of those players you don't really notice, but he understands the game so well. Last season we had George Dobson, who is more of a fly into tackles, excites the crowd kind of thing. Connor Coventry is just that calm head in the midfield, controls the tempo of the game really well, helps his positioning, understanding how his teammates play. He's been very good. Greg Doherty, I mean, since we've been on this incredible run, he's been absolutely brilliant. He covers every single blade of grass. He's all over the pitch. He's running, getting into challenges, getting into the box to try and score. He's been very crucial in the running. And Luke Berry's a bit of a mixed one at the moment with us because he's easily one of the most intelligent footballers in our squad. You know, his positioning, his awareness, he knows where to be. Off the ball, he's absolutely brilliant. He's had a little bit of issues with his end product in terms of finishing. He gets into all these great positions, but he's just been missing the final finish in the last few weeks. But he's been brilliant. Besides that, and obviously Karoy Anderson, he's absolutely loved by Nathan Jones. He's a perfect Nathan Jones kind of player. Young, aggressive, likes to get stuck in, great fitness as well. Questions around his technical ability, but he's got so much time to develop and sort of getting to learn that side of the game, which I think he will do under Nathan Jones, who really rates him.
Well, Chris, you've made a wonderful case to sort of believe in Charlton. Is there anything that you going into the run and you're feeling a little bit apprehensive about with regards to Charlton, or are you just kind of?
Sorry, you cut out there, Gav.
Sorry, I don't know if you heard that. Sorry, did you hear much of that?
Yeah, sorry, you cut out.
Sure. Sorry about that. Might be a bit of a delay. Not sure, but yeah. Do you? Is there You've made a great case to believe in Charlton. Do you have a reason to? Is there an area or an aspect of Charlton's team at the moment that you're feeling a little bit apprehensive about going into the run-in, or have you got full belief in everyone?
I think in the starting 11, I think there's a few certain player profiles that if they were to get injured, so for example, Tyrese Campbell, Thierry Small, or even Lloyd Jones, who we've seen when he missed 6 weeks of the season, we went on that awful seven game winless run, I believe it was. I think if we were to lose one of them, then obviously we have to change the way we play. And I don't think we have a like-for-like replacement in those sort of areas. But if this core 11 stays fit for the rest of the season, I've got absolutely no doubt that we will be up there come the end of the season.
Can you put a percentage chance on it for top two for Charlton?
For top two, God, if I had to say, I'd say probably 25%.
Oh, okay, that's lower than I was expecting you to say.
Yeah, because I think that Wrexham game is very 50-50.
Right, okay.
Go. And then obviously we the thing is, being 5 points off, we have to pretty much be flawless for the rest of the season. And we have got some other tough games as well. Wycombe away, I know they're not playing the greatest, but there is a reason that if they do find that 4 months later on, once Mike Dodds has had some time to implement his ideas, that can be a bit of a tougher challenge. And Huddersfield, now that Michael Duff's gone as well, you know, beat Crawley, I believe it was 5-0.
Yes.
Or 5-1. Yeah, I think that that's going to be a very difficult game at the Valley as well. But besides that, I've got no reason to doubt that we have got the ability to get that second place.
Yeah, I think because Burton Albion at home on the final day, if they're relegated by that point, you know, there's a good chance that you do the job in that one. However, what's really interesting is you've got Wycombe and Wrexham away in the 2 games before that. So it's basically about, can you take up as close to maximum points as possible from Mansfield away, Lincoln at home, Cambridge away, and Northampton at home in the next 4 games, and then the next 6, including Peterborough away and Huddersfield at home, which is going to be another tough one. But then go into those 2 with Wycombe away and Wrexham away in a strong position, so that you could afford to maybe draw those games or take 3 points from those games, and then you can still be in a position on the final day where if you beat Burton, you're up.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, Chris, thanks so much for joining us, especially at late notice. We really appreciate it, mate, and all the best for the rest of the season.
Brilliant. Thank you for having me on. Take care.
Top man.
Cheers. See you later.
So,
Bye.
So, James, I mean, just kind of reflecting on what Chris was saying there now, has that made you kind of go a bit further on? Because I kind of went into this podcast thinking Wrexham might get there by default off the back of that victory at Wycombe. But now I'm actually thinking, you know what, maybe Charlton can continue that run and maybe put some heat on those two.
Good salesman, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Definitely convincing us about Charlton. I think Charlton's chances are definitely stronger than the table suggests. I think if you look at the table, obviously it reads Wycombe first, Wrexham, then Charlton, then Stockport. Is that right?
Yeah. So it's Wycombe on goal difference over Wrexham, and then Charlton and Stockport.
Yeah. Whereas I think I'd have it Wrexham first, just because they've got the points on the board over Charlton and Stockport, and big win at Wycombe. Then I think I'd have Charlton for me second favourites, just because of Wycombe have been a bit, hit and miss under Mike Dodd so far. Then it's between the other two, Stockport and Wycombe, depending on your preferences, who you fancy more as a team. Probably you edge Wycombe because they've got the points on the board again. But yeah, Charlton, the only slight drawbacks I have is that they've got more games away than they do at home. And obviously, as you mentioned, they've got trips to Wrexham and to Wycombe. But then again, Wycombe, like we say, are a bit hit and miss at the moment. And Wrexham's home form has absolutely fallen off a cliff lately. Their away form has obviously improved drastically. They've picked up more away points than anybody else over the last 6 away games, which if you'd said that to me in January, you would have said, no, there's no chance that Wrexham would be a better away team than they are a home team, because they couldn't find any form really on the road consistently, whereas at home they were absolutely unbeatable, basically. But yes, Charlton, that's the only slight issues that I have with their chances, that they've still got 5 points to make up. They've got trips away to Wrexham and to Wycombe, which you think if they had points on the board, potentially a point would do at either of those. But now they've probably got to go there and beat those teams because of the points gap. But it's Nathan Jones. At the end of the day, you have to believe, even if he doesn't want his players going to blue water, he's still got them believing. I'm sure they'll be happy getting rid of whatever sacrifice he wants them to make.
Absolutely. Our next guest is Wycombe Wanderers journalist James Richings from Bucks Free Press. Excellent coverage of the Wanderers, and you can go and subscribe there for regular content on Wycombe Wanderers. James, great to have your insights as always. Thanks so much for your time. We've had a really good sale there from our Charlton fan, and I'm just wondering, are you feeling bullish enough to make a strong case for Wycombe Wanderers, given that you are in pole position as things stand?
I'll always make a strong. I'll always do my best to represent Wycombe in the best way possible. That's for sure. So yeah, I mean, looking at the table now, it's so close to call. It really, really is. If you're looking at the balance of play for the entirety of the season, you would think it'll either be Wrexham or Wycombe for that last automatic spot with Birmingham. But Wycombe's form since the start of this year has been incredibly iffy, very, very iffy. The Rotherham game on Tuesday night is a huge, huge boost. The first half was absolutely dreadful. I'm not exaggerating when I say that's probably one of the worst half of football I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, it was so bad, and it was so unrecognisable of what Wycombe were like at the start of the season. So when they went 1-0 down, I thought, well, here we go. And I'm very optimistic. So for me, that's like, oh no, this isn't great. But then Wycombe showed that fighting spirit that they've had under Gareth Ainsworth, under Matt Bloomfield, and now hopefully under Mike Dodds, that they are very much in this automatic promotion hunt, and it could still be theirs. The defeats to Wrexham on Saturday really did take the wind out of their sails. It really, really did. Largest crowd of the season to fall at the wayside was a huge disappointment. But now, a few days later, they go into the international break, in the automatic promotion places. It's a great place to be. But you look at the games that Wycombe have got coming up; they're not easy. They're not. They've got Charlton. And Charlton are absolutely flying at the moment. They've got Stockport last day of the season. They've got a midweek trip to Huddersfield coming up. They've got Bolton coming up. They've got Reading coming up. They've got Leyton Orient coming up. I kid you not. Wycombe's next few games are teams against 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th. Right? And you need to put it into context to think, Wycombe aren't a side that they were like at the start of the season when they were bashing teams for fun. They've got a new manager, new systems in place, a lot more defensive. So it's going to be a very, very interesting end of the season. But I can only hope we can get into that final two, because I don't want any more playoff drama.
I mean, there has been a lot of draws for Wycombe Wanderers as well. I mean, it's not like you've had too many defeats, because there was the defeat to Wrexham, there was the defeat at Birmingham. Other than that, there haven't been any defeats under Mike Dodds' reign, going back to the end of Matt Bloomfield's era. Obviously, the 2-1 loss at Charlton in the last game of 2024. So that would be the argument that I think Mike Dodds would make, that Wycombe have been in games. It's and only losing to the other two in the top three. And I think that's a valid point. I guess the feeling would be that the size of the squad can be a strength in terms of having options to pick from, but it can also be it brings its own challenges, I think it's fair to say.
Oh, very much so. Mike Dodds has said that that's been the biggest challenge he's faced so far, is letting players down who aren't injured, telling them you're not going to be in this squad. And I think with Wycombe now having a billionaire owner and there's money to spend, you're not going to please everyone in the squad. So, for example, you look at the team against Wrexham on Saturday. Everyone was expecting Alex Lowry to be in the 18, because he's such a dynamic player. He's the sort of piece of player that gets you off the edge of your seat. He wasn't even in the squad, and you're thinking, well, that game in front of a huge crowd, he could have played into that, and that could have made the difference. Wycombe obviously signed these two chaps from Denmark, broke their transfer record fee twice in a space of within like 10 days. They've hardly played because they're still getting up to speed, because in Denmark it was their pre-season when we could sign them. James Berry, who did incredibly well at Chesterfield, he's only played twice since coming in January, and so there's so much for Mike Dodds to do, and he knows he's come into a very unique position, that a team second in League One have got a new manager, and he doesn't really want to rock the boat. He wants to keep things steady, because he knows how good Wycombe have been this season. So obviously, as you said, Gab, you've got a load of pros with having a big squad, but then you do have a lot of negatives, because if a player isn't injured and they feel that they're doing everything they can for the manager and they're not getting picked, then what does that say? So Wycombe have got 9 cup finals now, 27 points to play for. They know they need at least 4 or 5 wins to guarantee that second automatic spot, because the fans, and I can see this from the forums and speaking to them, they really don't want the playoffs. You've been in the top 2 for virtually the whole season. The last thing you want to do is play 2 more games in a lottery, miss out on that, then you have to start from scratch again in August. So for Wycombe, it's very much top 2. That's the aim, and then the lottery of the playoffs will just play by itself. But at this moment, they're second, 7, with a better goal difference than Wrexham. Those thrashings at the start of the season really did help. So we just got to wait and see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, James, the analogy that I'd make would be having a really nice, long, fancy lunch at 3:00 in the afternoon, and then going for dinner at 7:00 as well, where it's like it's exciting and it's fun, but it also feels like a kind of the timing feels a little bit off, where it's like you're in this in one sense you're in this really exciting position, as I mentioned in the intro, where Wycombe Wanderers are fighting to get into the Championship, which is an incredible height for Wycombe Wanderers and their history, and also they're investing in players that are technically, in terms of potential, far above a lot that they've had in much of their history as well. And they've also got an extremely exciting coach who's very well regarded. So in terms of, if you look at all those things in isolation, it's actually a really exciting picture. But the amalgamation of them, the idea that you're bringing in a coach that is competing with the likes of Nathan Jones, Phil Parkinson and Dave Challoner, who are very long in the tooth, and somebody who doesn't know yet how to get results in this kind of environment, I'm not quite sure how it all comes together. You got 15 new players coming in January. You've got a massive squad. It feels a little bit sort of exciting but odd. There's a massive contradiction there.
Yeah, I felt that with the, like I mentioned, the turn down bids for Kone and then the appointment of Dodds kind of gave contradicting messages. But in terms of the general picture for Wycombe fans, I do think there is still a lot of optimism, and perhaps even though the wind has been taken out of our sails a little bit, it shouldn't be overblown. They're still in a really strong position. Obviously, you went to the Wrexham game, Gab. I don't know if you did as well, James. I assume you did. That as we mentioned, that game could have gone either way. There were chances there for Wycombe. They nearly came away with a draw at the end. James Berry, a great save from Okonkwo, which you can't really account for that. He did everything right, basically, Berry. It's just, one of those moments where Okonkwo comes up with the goods. And I still think that they're creating a decent amount, whether that reliance has shifted a little more towards set plays than perhaps it did before in terms of creation. But at this stage of the season, you would say perhaps early on in the season that set piece creation being a large part of your chance creation is not extremely positive, or late goals being a big part is not extremely positive because they're perhaps seen as a little bit less sustainable. But at this stage of the season, with so few games to go, it's kind of, you'll take what you can get. Any creation is good creation at this stage of the season. And Wycombe have definitely had a lot of games where it's been fine margins in it over the last, even those draws, they definitely could have gone either way. Richard Kone back now. I still think Javier Simons, I'm still a big fan of him. He's been out of the team. He's coming back in now. And really, the Wrexham defeat was big, but then you go to Rotherham and you put yourself right back in it. You show that you're fighting for that position. And like James mentioned, they're still in the top two. They're still the ones in the pole position with their own fate in their hands at the moment. So even though there's all these, as you mentioned, contradicting parts, and you do feel a bit uneasy about the situation because it's not as straightforward potentially as, Wrexham, what you're going to get from them, and Charlton, what you're going to get from them. It's still very positive for Wycombe to be in this position heading into this stage of the season, especially when you take into consideration the fact that Matt Bloomfield left halfway through the season and they've still managed to sustain form enough to still be in second place, which is all credit to Mike Dodds, because a lot of people would say it was a lose-lose situation for a manager, because you're either seen as riding off the coattails of the previous manager or you're seen as the guy that blows it up.
I would 100% agree. It's like you said, there's a lot of contradicting messages, but at this moment in time, Wycombe are second going into the international break. There are so many good things to look at. In terms of the bigger picture, it's just been a bit wobbly since, I would say, January time. But every single team that goes for promotion is going to have a little bit of a wobble, whether it be at the start of the season, the end of the season, or in the middle. For Wycombe, you'd like to think the Rotherham game would start some momentum. Looking at it from that perspective, it's then annoying that you got the game against Huddersfield this weekend that's been called off. But then at the same time, you could look at it and think, okay, it's been a bit higgledy-piggledy before Rotherham, have a week off and then just start afresh. And like I said, that win in midweek was so important. It really, really was. And as soon as they went 1-0 down, they didn't sit back. And I think that's what Mike Dodds is learning, just watching it, because since he's taken over, he's been very, very cautious of the defence. That's what he wants. That's what he's been working on. And we've seen that Wycombe have hardly prior to Rotherham, I think Wycombe had only conceded one goal every time they had played. If they had conceded under Dodds, they've kept a handful of clean sheets. So Wycombe, you could argue, have been a bit too defensive minded. But on Tuesday, they threw that into the wind and were like, no, we need to get this win. And to get it the way they did was brilliant. You could argue Rotherham mid-table, nothing to play for. It doesn't really matter, but they're still a good side, Rotherham. As any team managed by Steve Evans, it's not going to be easy. And we can manage to get the win. And you like to think that will now kickstart in what is now the crucial part of the season. As we said earlier, Wycombe's next 9 games, I think most of the teams are in the top half. Some of them are in the playoffs, which is incredible to think. So there'll be a lot of twists and turns yet.
Just to jump in there, sorry, before you do, Gab. I think as well, you mentioned like you said about momentum, and this could be a great start for the momentum. But also, since he's come in, has Mike Dodds had that much time on the training field? The schedule is so relentless between the games at this kind of stage of the season, where you've got cups that you're playing, and I know that Wycombe had an FA Cup tie against Preston as well. And there's probably not been a massive gap for him to be able to get his ideas across in terms of a lot of training. So maybe these 2 weeks or a week and a half, in between the Rotherham game and the next game will just give him a bit more time to get his ideas across to the squad in the training field without having to think about an immediate upcoming game. And you also, we talked about how maybe the other managers have probably got a bit more promotion experience in their CV and maybe that kind of level-headedness at this kind of stage of the season. But then you look at the January recruits and you've got Will Norris, who's won promotion. You've got Sonny Bradley and Adam Reach, who have all come in. All have got, experience at a higher level. A few of them have got promotions on their CV as well. So maybe that will help Dodds' case that potentially they've brought in a bit more experience within the squad, even if it's not coming from the manager down.
Oh, very much so. And I agree. I like the point where you say they could, having all this time off could really, really restart them going into Lincoln, because you're right that the schedule has been pretty relentless. It's been pretty rare that Wycombe have had a Tuesday off, to be honest with you. Yet you look at the ironic thing, and this does make me laugh. Mike Dodds has won 3 games for Wycombe so far, and they've all come on a Tuesday night. They've all come in midweek. So if anything,
cancel Saturdays, James.
Exactly. He probably wants midweek games between now and May. That's for sure. But Wycombe now they've got a good 10 days ahead of Lincoln at home at the end of March. So you don't want to be too critical because he's still very new to the role, but there can't be really many excuses to think about preparation because they've got 3 weekends. They then got a whole week ahead of what is a huge game. So the schedule is relentless, but then you look at the start of the season, Wycombe were playing Saturday, Tuesday, but they had that momentum and they were top of the league for a large part. So I think Dodds is just still finding his feet. And you say about the personnel, Will Norris was in the team of the year last year. He knows how to get out of this league. Sonny Bradley is such a professional. His goal was well taken on Tuesday night. And Xavier Simons, my word, I don't know how he's managed. I don't know how he's in League One. There must have been a championship club out there who missed out on him because he's too good for League One. That's for sure.
I don't know if you've seen this. Well, sorry, Gab. I don't mean to cut you off again. I don't know if you've seen this with Blues much, Gab, but I think people sometimes overlook the fact that players are human and they do get tired, especially this kind of stage of the season. And like we said about the amount of games that, it's going to take a toll on their bodies. They can't perform at the exact same level when they're playing so frequently. So maybe this international break will give all 4 teams really that chance to have a week off, reset, and then we'll see who comes out the best and the freshest out the other side of the international break, and maybe that'll prove the difference.
Well, I think somebody who'll definitely prove the difference is Richard Kone, James. Must be absolutely over the moon to have him have his first start for quite a while, it feels.
Yeah, him missing Wrexham was a huge blow. So obviously Wrexham are going to look at that and think, that's a huge boost for them. For Wycombe, it was a real deflating moment. Comes back into because for those who weren't aware, he was ill on the day of the game and he wanted to play, but he was too poorly to even get onto the bench, so they had to send him home. Comes back in for the Rotherham game and he scores 3 minutes after Wycombe go 1-0 down. He's now scored 21 goals from 42 games this season. It's 50%. So he's such an incredible raw talent. He really, really is. And Wycombe turning down multiple £1 million bids for him for a club like Wycombe shows that he's very much part of the future. And let's be real, money talks. So if Wycombe get a ridiculously good offer, obviously they're going to listen to that. But Wycombe need to keep him fit between now and the end of the season. He's been well. You don't want to single out Wycombe's success on one player, but he has very much been one of the key men for Wycombe this season. Without his goals, Wycombe would not be where they are. That goes for sure.
Yeah, and I think it's great that you can lean on his individual quality at the high stakes point of the season. James, this is what I would do, I think, if I was in Mike Dodds' situation. I would think, okay, I'm still learning as a coach how to apply some of my ideas to senior football. So while I do that, I'm going to go right back to the template that Matt Bloomfield laid out, a template that the players are familiar with and that we know they can deliver with. So I'm not sure would be looking to change formation from that for the business end of the season. I think I would go to a back four. I would go with experienced players, so Jack Brimmer and Luke Lay as fullbacks. And then get Siemens is basically the Morley replacement in midfield. Get Cam Humphreys in the 10, Kadoa and Onyedim are out wide, and then Kone up top. And I would simplify things and go basically back to the template that Matt Bloomfield laid out, because I think stripping things back and going for simplicity at this stage of the season, players that were there in the first half of the campaign, the new players we can work out in, maybe in the summer, and we can sort of streamline the squad a little bit then, and we can maybe get to cross that bridge when we come to it. But I think for right now, Wycombe Wanderers have got to strip things back and go back to the template that brought them incredible results under Matt Bloomfield.
I mean, that's what Mike Dodd said. Mike Dodd said that when he first took the role, he didn't want to change anything. He said it would be, I can't remember the exact word he used, but it was along the lines of it would be very unprofessional of him just to come into a new side, completely rip it up and then do what he wants to do because he's the head coach. He knows how close Wycombe are to playing championship football this season. He doesn't really want to rock the boat. But at the same time, he knows that he's got to have his own, he needs to tweak it in what he sees as right. So you'd like to think that Wycombe going forward after the internationals will revert to what Matt Bloomfield did, but then Mike Dodd is his own man and he doesn't want, I wouldn't say be associated, but he wants to have his own spin on things. And you're sort of, and you can look at it from the fact that he could be in a bit of a rock and a hard place because he doesn't want to be the guy that implements his own ideas and he completely derails.
It's not the right time, James. It's the high pressure point of the season. I don't think it's the right time to be implementing new ideas. I think you've got to play the situation that you're in and be very realistic about the time frame in which you can implement new ideas, especially in a high pressure environment. That's just how I feel about it.
No, I agree. I think most of the fan base will look at it and think, well, yep, you're the new guy in, but let's just hope not many two changes are made because we've seen under Matt Bloomfield it works. We've seen it, and don't get me wrong, it took a long time for Bloomfield to really get things going. I mean, I think it's important to put things into perspective that in December 2023, Bloomfield was very close to getting sacked. That's how close he was. I mean, Wycombe went 12 games without a win. In the league. They went from, I think, 8th, down to 19th. It was an awful run of form. And then fast forward to New Year's Day 2024, Wycombe's form was just incredible. And they saw them go from 19th to 9th. And you're thinking if they didn't have that dip, where could they have finished last season?
Yeah, because they actually started last season. Really, I remember the 4-1. I think you won at Fleetwood in October, and you were right up there. So both sides of that season were really good. And then you had a few unlucky games. I'm sure there were games you had at home where you absolutely peppered the opposition and couldn't. So where was I? James, just before we wrap up, could you put a percent? I know this is a tough question, bit of a Paxman question from me, so forgive me. Can you put a percentage on for me as to Wycombe's chances of a top 2 finish? What do you think?
It's a very Paxman-like question, isn't it? I'll be careful what I say. I can either be very honest, speak with the heart, or give you a politician's answer. No, honestly, it's 50% because you're in there or you're not. It's as simple as that. Wycombe have been in the top 2 for the vast majority of the season, and they've shown why. I mean, smashing Stockport 5-0 away from home when they were on an absolutely incredible run at the time. It's no mean feat. Just even in some of the defeats, Wycombe have been very close. But then the teams around Wycombe have really, really improved, and Wycombe need to be just keeping one eye on them, but at the same time, they need to be looking forward. So I'm going to go for 50% because that's all it is. You're in it or you're not.
There you go. James, brilliant stuff. I'd implore everyone watching this to go and get subscribed to Bucks Free Press if you're interested in the best Wycombe Wanderers content. James, thanks so much for joining us.
No worries. I really appreciate it. And thank you as well, James. Have a great evening. See you soon.
See you later.
Top man.
Cheers.
So our final guest of the evening is Russ Johnson from the excellent Scarf Bagara War podcast on Stockport County. Russ, are we talking about Stockport County as the outsiders in these 4 contenders for second, or do you feel like you're right in it as much as anyone?
Well, I've been listening to your other guests. I think nobody considers us even in it, to be fair. I don't think I've heard our name mentioned about twice maximum in the last 20 minutes. So, no, I think we're in it. We're only 1 point behind Charlton. Okay, you could say Charlton's form is pretty good, but form's temporary. They weren't that good earlier in the season. We've drew with them home and away. So, no, I think we're in it. I think we'll see. We'll know much more after Saturday. Obviously, we've got the old arch enemy Wrexham away on Saturday, so we'll see. We'll know more then. But no, I think we're in it, and we've got an experienced manager that knows how to get promotions. He knows this part of the season, so why can't we be as confident as your other guests that have been on selling you their dreams?
Absolutely. James, I mean, we went to Stockport, I think it was on New Year's Day, and off the top of my head, I think they played us off the park, and we were very lucky to get a 1-1 draw. So presuming you did see that game, what did you sort of take from Stockport and what they can offer this league?
I liked them in the first game as well, to be honest, Cab. I thought the second half they made changes and definitely caused issues in the first game. But the second game, they were relentless. And like I said, when I talked about Wrexham, we were lucky to get a point in the end. From a Blues perspective, you have to admire those kind of performances where you don't play well, but you come away with a point. But from a Stockport perspective, they were absolutely all over us, really physical in that game, but a lot of calmness as well when you looked at Bate and Norwood and, them getting their foot on the ball. Yeah, they were really impressive in the 2 games against us, particularly in the second half, St Andrews, and then the second game. And like Russ said, they're definitely not out of it. The points again point to Wrexham and Wycombe, but Stockport's form again lately is very strong. It's potentially not as good as Charlton's over that long period, but again, really strong lately, and there's quality there. And that win over Bolton was a really good showing of that last time out.
Absolutely. Russ, are you surprised by the immediacy of the impact from Benoni Bleki Anderson from...
Easy for you to say. Just call him Benno. That's what he says. He just says call him Benno. I'm not surprised. I mean, we've got to remember he's on international duty now, so he'll be missing for Saturday, so he won't be there Saturday. No, not been surprised. He came with some sort of reputation, if you like. So he's been drip fed into the team, and Challoner says, he's not ready to start yet, although he started him against Bolton and he had a really decent sort of solid first half. We were able to bring Wootton on at half time, which kind of changed the game with the other 2 substitutions at the tough sheet. So not been surprised. To be honest, he's an incubation. Let's just say that, because he will get better and better as time goes on. He's not for now. He's part of our emerging talent program, so there's no pressure on him. But he does excite the fan base. He's kind of like a striker that can do many roles. Where he's got Wootton, who's clearly the target man. Tanto Alafi likes to get in behind. He's strong, a good dribbler. Whereas Benno, he can do different things. He scored 2 really good goals against Blackpool. The second one was brilliant. It was a header where he was moving backwards. He was off balance, moving backwards, and he managed to steer it into the bottom corner. So from a Benno perspective, really, really excited about him, but probably not for this season. He could probably come on and make an impact, cause some problems, but he's one for next season and the season after, definitely.
Yeah, big step up from the Nordic leagues to League One football, but certainly a great start for him and a little bit ahead of schedule, you might say. But on the other end of the age spectrum, you've got Ollie Norwood and the class that he brings in midfield, alongside, by the way, Lewis Bate, who's also been one of the best midfielders in League One this season. So those 2 are really pulling the strings at the moment. Yeah,
they are. And that's why I think we're not out of it. If those 2 are staying fit, they've been out themselves on occasion, but they're both back in now. Those 2 stay fit, we can go with the best in this division, on our day. So, we've got Wrexham away on Saturday. We've got Wycombe to play away on the last day, which is probably all going to be said and done by then, I would hope. And we've got Huddersfield at home to play on the 21st of April. So again, quite late on. So if we can keep those two fit, they would, like you say, Gab, you put the nail on the head there. They will pull the strings, and the players around them are doing what they need to do as well. And I think what we're probably missing is just that bit of quality in the final third, just to see teams off. We went toe to toe with Bolton on Saturday. We'd have won it if it was a boxing match on points, and it was because of Tanto Alafi, that little bit of magic. I don't know if you've seen the goal. Sort of gets it on the halfway line, beats Towell. I think it is he on Towell.
Yeah.
Runs into the box, gets in the box, and finishes really, really nicely. That's what we missed about against Charlton. The other guest was waxing lyrical about Charlton before, which is, I expect that from a Charlton fan. Don't get me wrong, but when they came to Edgeley Park a couple of weeks ago, they weren't that great, and it was only because there was no quality in either final third, and I count ourselves in that. That somebody didn't pick up the points. And we had them at generally arm's length. So that's why I'm kind of confident that we're still in it. I'm not saying we're going to finish second. The 6 points difference, isn't there? I think we're 65, they're 71. Still a lot to play for, 27 points. So if we can start, it starts on Saturday for me. If we lose on Saturday, I would probably say that's us done. But if we can go and get a result against Wrexham on Saturday, who are not great at home, let's have it right. Cannon's out. Elliot Lee's just coming back, I think. So yeah, it's really exciting. It's lovely to be part of it.
Certainly is. You've got a really exciting centre-back pairing in Brad Hills, who did superbly on loan at Accrington Stanley last season, and another really emerging talent in Ethan Pye, who's a homegrown prospect and could be claiming a high value come the summer for whichever league Stockport County find themselves in. But are you surprised at how well those two have coped with the pressure of League One football and at the upper end?
Yeah, I think so. I think we're all surprised, really. I mean, we were surprised that Brad Hill's coming in and getting straight in the team. And me personally, I was thinking, okay, we've got a player on loan from Norwich who's going to add to our depth, because we had Horsfall at the time, I think, or maybe he was injured, but it was brought in around that time. So I was thinking, he's going to come in, do a job. And honestly, Brad Hills has come in and he just looks like a championship player, if not higher to me. He's so strong. He's only 20. He's just beyond belief. He's only 20. He looks so strong. He can carry the ball out from the back. He's great in the air. He's just got all the qualities you want from a centre half that plays in a back three. And then Ethan Pye, they've just gelled so well together. And there is a school of thought among County fans that when Fraser Horsfall does come back, he's expected back in the next 2 or 3 weeks, he's going to struggle to get in. Because Pye, we've said it on this show before, Pye's a left-sided centre half, left-footed centre half. They're like the proverbial rocking horse doodah, aren't they? So Connolly couldn't even get in the team. He was brought on Saturday at half time. So yeah, it's looking good at the back. So and this is where our sort of confidence comes from. You've hit a few nails on the head here already, Gab. You've obviously done your research. Pye and Hills are absolutely they're really, really strong together. We look really, really good defensively. Bolton couldn't really get through. Even towards the end of the game, when it was wave after wave of pressure, there was no real emergency defending from us. It all seemed a bit calculated and considered. There was the odd block, and Corey and I had to make a save, but apart from that, it didn't feel like it was all hands on deck and everyone was panicking. It was all nicely sort of looked after. Then you've got Baton Norwood in midfield, and if you add to that Wootton and a sprinkling of Tanto Alafi, who's really, really hit form, by the way. He is on fire. He sort of came into the team. He's been in and out of the team, really. He's had this sort of recurring shin injury that he doesn't wear shin pads big enough for him. So Challinor said, well, that's a risk. Wear bigger shin pads. And he's probably going, well, I don't want to wear bigger shin pads. And he always gets a shin injury. So he's been in and out. But since he's been back in and not picked up an injury, he just looks so strong and so clinical as well. So, like I say, those 6 players in a 2-2-2, add the players around it, and I think this is why I'm fairly confident we'll stick with it hopefully after Saturday, and be in the mix and cause some upsets.
Certainly causing some upsets at the moment. James, from a neutral perspective, it's so impressive how Stockport County have had this rise and are continuing it, because as much as they've got the external investment, there's only so many players you can bring in at any one window. And so naturally, when you have this incredible rate of progression, you're going to end up with a few players that are performing at a higher level than they might naturally be at. And so from a neutral perspective, it speaks what wonders, doesn't it, to the work Dave Challoner has to, in a way, maximise his squad, even though this is a club with money and ambition.
Definitely, I think a lot of people would have wrote Stockport off when Louis Barry went and would have said, that's probably the end of their chances, but they've coped brilliantly without him. And I think we saw, especially in that game against Bolton, just how impressive Dave Challoner is. He makes 3 substitutions at half-time, all 5 substitutions. He's made more subs than any of the other teams in this conversation, more minutes per sub than any of the other teams in this conversation. His adaptability within games is really impressive and can make the difference in a game where Stockport might not be, in their best form, and then they make a few changes, adjust things, come out a little bit of the best team. So that's definitely going to be impressive. I wanted to ask you, Russ, as well about Corey Adai. You mentioned him there. I'm a big fan of him personally. I think he's got a lot of raw attributes for a keeper, and you don't have put up the numbers of goals prevented he did last season without having something about you in a team that faced a lot of shots for Crawley. Obviously, had a difficult start to life for Stockport. Could this be a make or break few weeks for him in goal? Could we really see him come to the fore in the absence of Hinchliffe?
Yeah, absolutely, and I really, really hope he does. He's coming for some stick at the Cheadle end, definitely. As there's that air of nervousness, which is the polar opposite to when Ben Hinchliffe goes. He's named on the team sheet and runs towards the Cheadle end. It's almost like he's more comfortable away from home at the moment because of that. And he was really, really good against Bolton, and he built on a good display from the week before as well. So the signs are there, and they're starting to creep in now. So everyone bemoaned his aerial ability, coming for crosses, commanding his 6, maybe 18-yard box, but he started to do that now. He is, 6'8" or something? I don't even know what he is. So you're right. I think it is make or break for him, and this could be. I hope it is make for him, because he's a keeper of that size. If they've got the talent, they tend to go far in the game, don't they? You look at Forster, you look at Nick Pope, those sorts of keepers, they go far in the game. So, he's slowly growing on the fan base, I think, as well. Some good displays, some really good saves, one-on-ones on Saturday. So I'm personally really positive about him. I'm in the keepers union as well. I used to be a goalkeeping coach, so I'm a backer. I'm backing him definitely. So I hope he does really, really well and kicks on from here.
At least you're honest.
Oh, sorry, Gav. Again, I keep cutting you off. I think it is difficult for a keeper, isn't it? Once there's that loss of confidence, particularly from the fan base, as you mentioned, to kind of restore that reputation. But yeah, strong performances from him in the last part of this season could kind of leave that lasting impression that he is a good enough goalkeeper to cut it at this level. So yeah, I agree with what you said. Really hope he kicks on, and maybe he'll make the difference in a game or two. And I think it's really interesting as well how we've mentioned obviously about that game, Stockport versus Wycombe on the last game of the season. Now it could all be done and dusted by then. And in the chances that, Stockport and Wycombe, potentially, if they both aren't in it, we could see one of those situations like we did last season with Leeds and Southampton in the Championship, where you've got 2 teams that are potentially facing each other in the playoffs, playing each other on the last day. And then if they're 4th and 5th, then maybe there's elements of that. Are they hiding the game plan, etc.? So there's a lot of exciting stuff for Stockport, even if it ends up not just making the automatic top 2. And I'm sure you'd agree, Russ, to even be this high at this stage of the season is a tremendous achievement. And yeah, all the best to Stockport, because they've been tremendous this season.
Cheers. Yeah. No, we're delighted to be in it. I mean, I think I said it last time on your show. I was thinking 12th or above. The club said just enjoy the ride. Challoner always keeps his cards close to his chest. Whatever we can do, we'll do. We'll go as far as we can. Speaking to Mark Stott, he says, why can't we go up? You know, it's this kind of thing. So you've got the whole spectrum there, and fans will say, well, I've said 12 or above. You reset your expectations when you're in the playoffs for as long as we are. So I think the very minimum we're expecting now is the playoffs. If we dropped out of the playoffs by some disaster, then that would be a real disappointment, to be fair. But yeah, I think everyone's nailed on. I think we're nailed on for the playoffs. I'd like to think that. What I'm thinking, I'm totally like really excited to be here, by the way. We're not just making up the numbers, but it's such good, so good for us to be top of League One after all the years. I just hope that we upset a few apple carts and make it exciting, and maybe cause the other podcast hosts and the other press, the other people in the press to go, actually, yeah, let's start talking about Stockport, because they are in this, and it's not just Wrexham, Wycombe and Charlton.
Well, Stockport used to be talked about for the wrong reasons, like an example of how not to run a football club, whereas now it's for the opposite. They're being talked about for all the right reasons. So it's wonderful to see. Russ, just before we let you go, can you put a percentage on it for us, the top two possibilities? Would you say about 10%, 15%?
Oh, I'd say a bit higher than that, Gabs.
Okay.
I would say I'm going to go as high as maybe 30 or 40%, because we're only a point behind Charlton. Obviously, in my calculation, I'm thinking if we lose against Wrexham on Saturday, which is probable because we never get a win at the racecourse. I hate going there, by the way. I say it on every podcast. I hate going because we always lose. I've been there 5 times and never seen us win. But yeah, if we lose on Saturday, then that goes down dramatically. Of course it does. If we win, then it starts to creep up. That's what maths does, doesn't it? So I'm going to go. Let me say 35%. I think is what I'm going to go for.
Over a third. Wow. Okay. Interesting. So very confident from Russ. Listen, thanks so much for your time. Always appreciate contributions from the Scarf Bagara War podcast. And look forward to catching up again soon, mate.
Thank you,
mate. Enjoy. Cheers, James.
Cheers. James, it's really interesting, isn't it, hearing from 4 different sets of fans, and each of them, like if we say 25% is a quarter, I don't think any of them had less than 25%. I think they all might have gone higher than 25%. So work that one out. I think you gave me your rankings earlier that you would put Wrexham as favourites, then Charlton, then Wycombe, then Stockport. I think I would possibly, I'm not far off you. I would probably go with Charlton over Wrexham at this stage, just because I think the form and the feeling like they've got a real template. Like I think when you speak to a Wrexham and a Wycombe fan, you feel like they're in a great position that's wonderful for, in contrast with, certain parts of the history of their clubs. And there's loads to be excited about in both cases. But there's still this sort of nagging feeling of, are we quite, there's different questions for each of those teams. Whereas I think, speaking to the Charlton fan we had on, forgive me, I've forgotten his name because we literally arranged this very late on, but yeah, I really appreciated having him on. That it was actually very difficult to find flaws in Charlton. So yes, Wycombe and Wrexham have got the points on the board, but they've got a few nagging question marks over them, whereas Charlton, I think, have got what it takes to find real consistency between now and the end.
Yeah, Chris was the name for.
Chris, thank you. I'm glad you bailed me out. Thanks so much, Chris.
I think definitely there's a sense always with Wrexham and Wycombe that as well as they've played, it's almost like there's a little bit of, they still can't quite believe that they're in this race at this stage, but for different reasons. Obviously, they've both been exceptional teams, but Charlton kind of feel like, as Chris was very confident in the fact that, we're playing well enough to warrant our position at the moment. They're on such a good run of form that they're confident in their ability to beat anyone in this division at the moment. Whereas Wycombe and Wrexham still, like you said, some nagging doubts about them. And in terms of the points gap, that obviously, you'd say Wrexham and Wycombe, obviously 5 and 6 points over Charlton and Stockport is a healthy gap with just 27 points left to play for. But when you take into account the fact that Charlton and Stockport have both got to play Wrexham and Wycombe each, that probably is a big positive for both those sides at this stage of the season, where you're not relying on other teams, to take points off the top 2 to make up that points gap, that you can do it yourself if you go and beat either of those teams or both of those teams even. So those games really are going to be important. I think as well. We've talked about, the fixtures they've got, and the ideal fixtures for me at this kind of stage of the season are those teams that have little to play for. I know sometimes they can play better without freedom, but you want those teams that are in the middle pack, and then potentially even like Shrewsbury and Cambridge, and even Burston in a couple of weeks, or Leyton Orient in a couple of weeks, could end up being further away from their goals than they are currently. And then your Peterboroughs, your Northamptons, your Bristol Rovers, those kind of teams become, again, in the final few games season, teams with nothing to play for, essentially, rather than just pride. So you're probably looking at the teams that have got the most of those games in the ideal times have probably got the most favourable running. But Charlton and Stockport both know they've got to go to Wrexham and Wycombe and get results, which will make it exciting, because the away team is going there to win, rather than if it was the other way around, then maybe Wrexham and Wycombe, if they were going away to Charlton Stockport, would probably be going there thinking, as long as we don't lose, then we're okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there you have it. Very interesting set of perspectives from each of the fans, and it's been, I've really enjoyed this podcast, James.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much for joining me as co-host. It's been great to get your insights. You can follow James at James with a 3 instead of an E _34. And you can also subscribe to EFL Debate on YouTube, and follow us on Spotify as well. If you've thanks to all our guests. Thanks to you for watching at home. This has been the EFL Debate, and we'll see you again for another League One podcast next week.